Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. I was recently a guest on the RearView Mirror talk show with host Shakira Gamble. Shakira and I cover a lot of ground as we discuss the mass media's mind control programs, the overt use of occultism by the elites to steer their agenda. We also discuss chemtrails, Common Core, and other topics, along with what humanity, especially the young people, need to do to break free from the lies and deception of the Matrix. It was a great discussion with Shakira, and I hope you enjoy the show as much as I did.
Today, guys, gals, gents, young ladies, and friends, and all that jazz, I have the excellent and good fortune of interviewing a great gentleman who I deem to be well-versed and highly knowledgeable and incredibly discerning at articulating the unseen weapons against humanity. He is excellent at asking the right questions to debunk lies, and he knows how to rev those mental engines of free thinkers, both young and old. Hallelujah. So I introduce the acclaimed and highly respected Mike Williams. He is here, and he is the progenitor of the Sage of Quay radio and blog spot. I'm sorry I don't have like a hands clapping track for you, but you deserve it. Thank you for joining us, Mike. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you, Shakira. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yay. Okay, well, I just wanted to start off so that our viewers can have some kind of understanding. Like, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and tell them, like, how you just came to be.
When I was growing up, I had a lot of various types of experiences that taught me that existence isn't as we were taught or being told. So I had a lot of what some folks might consider to be paranormal types of experiences. Was not big into the church. I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and I saw early on that, at least from my perspective, that the church was engaged in a form of mind control. So it was not something that appealed to me. I was in a band for many years. I'm a musician, and but the band stuff wasn't paying the bills. So I wound up having to go get a job, and I wound up working in the corporate world for 32 years. Many times I felt like a fish out of water, but on the other hand, I learned a lot because I was able to see and peer through that window, that corporate window, and I was able to see the inner workings, which has benefited me tremendously in my work post my career. And today I am a hypnotherapist, and I'm still a musician. As you had mentioned, I do the blog, Sage of Quay Radio, and I do the radio show, the Sage of Quay Radio Hour. And the purpose of that show and the blog is to bring information to people, to bring knowledge and wisdom to folks, to see if I can get them to begin to critically think and free think. Because without critical thinking and without free thinking, we're going to stay stuck on the hamster wheel.
Yes, that is so true. It's kind of interesting that you have kind of journeyed. I've done something very similar. In regards to, like, I wasn't necessarily raised in a religion per se, but I always considered myself just a Christian. So it wasn't until I started to actually read the book for myself that I noticed that any direction that I kind of went in, I went into Catholicism and different avenues and sectors, because there's like 44,000 different denominations.
Right.
You know, so it's like, yeah. And the interesting thing about it is that it seemed to me that every direction I went, they were not talking about what was in the quote-unquote textbook for the class. So it was like the teacher was talking this weird kind of speak talk that felt good, that I was addicted to it for a while, and not to the point where it didn't cause me to constantly be curious, because I know I can't get it from any one location. It's not, the truth isn't going to just be found because you're going to a building on Sunday, but in that regard, it's interesting to me that you had gone through this journey and then went through the corporate sector and then got into hypnotherapy. Like, how does that play when you realize you're being hypnotized and now you know how to how does that work?
Well, the way it worked, it was I'm a very spiritual person, and the way I got into hypnosis is I was very much into researching near-death experiences, and I had ordered a book going back several years ago. The name of the book is Memories of the Afterlife. It's a book by Michael Newton. At the time, I didn't know who Michael Newton was. But long story short is the book was one of the most impressive books I've ever read. It connected all my dots, and it was about reincarnation and about past life regression under hypnosis. And so after reading that book, I decided that I need to have my own session and experience this past life stuff, and also experience what we refer to as life between lives. It's our soul's existence in between incarnations. It's our soul's existence in the spirit world. And so I had these sessions, and after leaving, I just never looked back. I said, I have to do this work because this work is very important to the awakening. It's very important that I do this in order to help others to become aware of the fact that they are spiritual beings, very powerful spiritual beings. The system that is in place today, Shakira, as you know, tries to suppress that. It doesn't want humans to know and to understand who they truly are.
No.
And because if humans did realize and come to a mass awakening as to who they really are, they are souls with imagination and creativity and a connection to the Creator and to the divine realms, then the matrix, the system that is in place today, would collapse like a house of cards.
That's interesting, because that's one of the TV shows that everybody likes to watch.
Right.
Well, I have never been hypnotized. I've seen all different kind of different breakdowns. I've had a couple of roommates that have experienced it for different reasons. They've had their personal journey and their needs, and it was helpful to them in some regards. And my father has had some situations where he has experienced like being in between from a situation that was dealing with his health. And you have all these questions, and you kind of wonder, and then you start to come out and see that there's this mind control. How do you encourage or teach or propose to hypnotize people? How does that awaken them to seeking? How does being indoctrinated by somebody else all over again, I'm just a little just trying to break down your walk to understand how you talk to your youth, your child that was you 30 years ago, that you probably could have spoken to, that didn't know what you know now.
Well, it's more than 30 years ago when I was a kid, but because I'm a much older guy these days. But, going back to when I was a kid, I didn't know any better. I would have these experiences, and I would go tell my parents, especially my mom, because she was more open to it. But, a lot of times I was told, well, it's just your imagination. It was a dream or something like that. So essentially it was played down, and I was told that the things that I was experiencing, as an example, apparitions, that...
Can you explain what apparitions are? I'm sure
Sure. An apparition is a ghost in layman's terms. It's when you actually see a translucent being, and they're there, and you can see them plain as day. I had that experience for months on end, and I would see these apparitions, these beings, several nights a week. And it was when I was going to sleep at night, and I was awake, and I saw them plain as day. That was the first, if you will, shot across the bow, where I thought to myself, especially later on in life, I thought, well, till this day, I can still picture and recall what that was like when I saw them. I can still describe them to this day. So what was that about? Somebody's going to tell me that didn't exist, or that I didn't see that? That's nonsense. I saw it, and it exists. So that was just one thing. And then, so what happens, Shakira, as you know, is that as we go through life, we live in a matrix, and which means that we live in a very controlled world. It's very controlled. From the time you're born to the time you die, it's all controlled. And so when you're having these type of experiences, or you're asking a lot of very good questions as a kid, free thinking, critically thinking types of questions, and kids do ask very probing questions, but what happens with most children is they get shut down, not intentionally. It's not like somebody's beating them down, but the parents don't know any better either. The teachers don't know any better because they were born and bred in the matrix also. So they are indoctrinated and propagandized. So they just, the answers that the child gets are these stock answers. And if you get told enough times that you have an active imagination and you're not seeing these things, eventually what happens is the child just gives up and moves on with life. And unfortunately, you do that enough, as a young child, you lose your connection to that level of expanded consciousness that we're all capable of. And by the way, that's the plan. That's the agenda, is to get us disconnected from our divine realms and our expanded consciousness.
Oh, so sure. Like, that is also in regards to how I wanted to reference Matthew 18, and saying that you have to be like the little children, and realizing that expanded consciousness is easily tapped into when you're younger because you are less tainted. You have had less indoctrinations to have walls to being able to, there are other dimensions. Like, we don't go to sleep and have dreams and have all these things that we can't really attest to science to putting together for us. And of course, it just boils down to everybody's individual experiences. And it's hard to tell somebody your experience in your dream. You're like, oh my God, I had this dream last night. And you start telling it to them, and they can't really relate to it because it's this ethereal kind of shadow type, untangible situation that makes it difficult to kind of bleed understanding, so that we can start to have those dialogues, so that when children are born and they have some of these spiritual questions, and they might have interactions with different dimensions, and it sounds psycho, right? It sounds crazy because they've already taught us from young that it was, but they give you all kind of like, cartoons and Supermans and Santa Clauses. But at the end of the day, the things that are unseen tend to go to the background, and it becomes, when you journey in life, where you got to turn around. You got to wait. Okay, you just got to put it all together and start to assess it from a different perspective. And I can relate to some of the things. I don't know whether or not our spiritual beliefs are completely, in congruous, or is that even a word? And I should know, I was an English major, but congruity. I'm going to make it up. Congruity. But get an education, folks. That I'm just saying, but yes, I do most certainly see some of these things that are happening as you have even gone through your journey and trying to reach out and communicate to somebody. There's nobody to talk to, and that's why I wanted to start this forum, to hopefully getting people who wanted to talk about it, because if we explore it from a different side, per se, we can at least have a balanced view. Like, when you go to court, you're supposed to have both sides. If you have a vote, you're supposed to have options, at least two. You have to explore and know, why do you choose one side or the other? Why do you stand there and make a definitive decision? Is it because everybody else is, or because, well, that's what you heard, or that's just, what you happened to stumble upon? Or is it because you actually researched and identified and said, okay, I like this over here, but I'm also going to identify and research that to see if it's definitely what I don't stand for, so that I know where I stand. So I love talking to critical free thinkers, no matter what, religious background or the context of how they find their source. I want to sharpen with people, but I also want to start where the kids are. And I have contacted you and asked you if you could, my first thought was starting with something that I thought our audience could relate to, since a lot of them are in school or going to college or just graduated. So I thought tackling American history would be a good place to start. But as you suggested, we should start with something that's a little bit more easily identifiable with the generation at hand, and that is the media. So can you share with us some of your understanding and research on how media and entertainment is used against the population?
Well, media and entertainment, Shakira, it's all mind control. It's all controlled. And the first thing that the folks listening to the show, the young folks, that you should understand is that 6 companies own all of the media in the United States. And when I say the media, I'm talking about TV, radio, the newspapers, magazines, movies, and so on. So in order to get the message out and to make sure that the message stays uniform and consistent, really what it takes is for 6 people to get together and say, this is what we're going to show them, and this is what we're not going to show them. And this is why when you take a look around and you're watching the television shows, and how many times have anybody, the kids, me, you, have said this, gee, all these shows are the same thing. All these shows are alike. And the reason why the shows are alike is because what they're doing is they're conditioning you. They want you to think a certain way. They want you to believe a certain way. And as an example, a lot of times we'll watch the television if you're watching the news. And even if it's not the news, a lot of times it's, it could be on a lot of the Hollywood stuff, the celebrity types of sites where you'll see a poll. We're going to take a poll. Well, a poll is not about what you think. It's not about your opinion. What a poll is a way for them to test whether their indoctrination and their conditioning is working the way it is intended. So if we stick with the news as an example, if they take a poll about a particular politician or a particular situation that's going on in the world, and they find that the poll results are not showing that the public or the masses are leaning in a direction that they want the masses to lean toward, as an example, they want war. The elites want war, but the masses are not in favor of war. Well, what that poll is saying is that they need to do more mind control and more conditioning because what they have out there right now isn't effective enough. Television has been, over the years, very incremental, but very purposeful to bring dysfunction to society. And so the early TV shows, if for those of us that are old enough to remember, they were very Americana. Leave It to Beaver, those types of shows. The family was solidified. There was a discipline in the family and right and wrong. There were very good stories and teachings that took place in those shows. And the reason why those shows were like that was because they had to get the masses acclimated to watching television. So it had to resonate with the person that was watching it. And most people are good people. And they want to have good families, and they want to raise their kids properly, and so on. They want to work hard. They want to support their families, send their kids off to school. So the early television shows were all about those types of feelings and topics and direction. And so it resonated with the masses. But slowly but surely what happened is, and we can see it today, it's really culminated after, I would say, 60 years, 6 decades. If you take a look at a show like Leave It to Beaver, and some folks are probably laughing, go, oh, that's not real life. And you know what? It's not real life because you've been taught that is not the way it is. You've been conditioned to believe that a family can't be like that. And I'm just using Leave It to Beaver as an example. There were many shows back then that had very solid foundation as far as morals and teachings of right and wrong. So if you fast forward 60 years and take a look at what's on television today, well, you have all of these reality TV shows, and all that they are doing is teaching dysfunction. They're conditioning you to accept the fact that dysfunction is okay. How many times do we see these shows where kids are in their late teens, early 20s, getting drunk, having gratuitous sex, doing drugs? This is not what the human existence is supposed to be about, but you're being conditioned to accept that level of functioning and existence. It's a very low frequency existence in life. So over 60 years, they have gradually taken it to that point. And the one thing people have to understand about the Matrix and about the elites, about the controllers, they have a lot of patience. They have a lot of patience. You can go back and read their white papers and their strategy papers going back into the 1950s and the 1960s and the 70s. They talk about all this. This is not new. This is not conspiracy. If you do the research, you will read and you will discover that virtually everything you're seeing today has a game plan that has been on the table for the last 50 to 60 years. And before, Shakira, you mentioned about kids and children and young adults losing their connection to their divine realms and their spirituality and their expanded consciousness. I just want to backtrack just a second here. This is the reason why children, by the time they're 6 years old, have had 50 to 60 vaccines. It's to disrupt the mind-body dynamic. That's what it's about. This is why fluoride is in the water. Fluoride is in the water. It has nothing to do with keeping you from getting cavities. Fluoride is about dumbing you down by lowering IQ and also to calcify your pineal gland. Your pineal gland is your third eye. It's your connection into the divine realms, into your expanded consciousness. It's the GMOs. What they're doing is they're introducing poisons into the body. And what happens when you ingest a poison, when you ingest chemicals, your body doesn't know what to do with that stuff. Your body is not designed to take in that stuff. It's designed to take in natural, organic foods. That is what your body is programmed to do. And that is how it functions efficiently and effectively on foods that are real foods. So when you bring in stuff like aspartame and you bring in stuff like fluoride and all the other chemicals that they have in the processed and GMO foods, your body sits there and says, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And so your body exerts enormous levels of energy trying to figure out what goes where. And this results in people becoming ill. This is why we have people with phantom pain like fibromyalgia, which, by the way, is not a diagnosis of anything. Fibromyalgia is a name given to pain where the doctors have no clue what's causing the pain. This is why people have all kinds of issues with stress, why they're anxious, why they have issues with their skin disorders. It's because of all of these foods and these vaccines and these flu shots and the fluoride, everything that's being brought into the body. It's done intentionally in order to break the mind-body dynamic down. That's why it's done. And the reason why I brought that up is because that is all wrapped around the overall mind control that is a perpetual motion machine that's in place 24/7 with the media. So if you're dumbed down because of fluoride and you're not feeling good, you feel very lethargic, you have no energy, you feel depressed. And these are all symptoms, by the way, of all of these processed foods and aspartame as an example. And then you're sitting in front of your television. The television emits alpha waves, and the alpha waves put you in a trance state. So when you're watching television, you're sitting there, you are in a hypnotic state. And as you're in that hypnotic state, what's happening is the television is giving you all kinds of imagery, and the unconscious mind loves imagery because imagination is the language of the unconscious mind. And so television creates an alpha state trance. And then the media imposes suggestions by utilizing the imagery and direct suggestions through loops. So as an example, and I think everybody can relate to this, if you're watching one of the cable news networks, CNN.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, if you watch Fox News or MSNBC, they're all the same. You'll see the same video image played over and over and over again. It's a loop. with spoken words from the quote-unquote reporter or the anchor, because they are anchoring the suggestions into your unconscious mind. And then you're going to see screen text, alert, terror, shooting. And this is all coordinated with the words and the images that you're seeing. And what it is, it's a massive, massive mind control program. So you have hypnotic words and imagery association. And this is how it works. And repetition is critical to imposing the conditioning. Critical. Because they know that a person, an individual, can break the programming by just stepping away from the catalyst. If they step away from the television and they shut the television off and they stop watching reality TV shows, they stop watching ball games, if they stop watching the news, what will happen is your mind will start to critically think again and start to free think again. Because what will happen is you're going to find alternative routes and alternative things to do which stimulate the mind. So you, God forbid, you might go do something creative. You might go write music, or you might go write poetry, or you might go paint. They don't want that. The other thing that you'll see, not to get too long-winded here, but I think it's important because I think it's important for the audience to understand this. When you're watching a television show, and we'll pick on the news again, you're going to see spinning logos and tickers on the screen. These spinning logos and tickers, they're there to induce eye fatigue and to put you in a trance loop. So while you're watching that spinning logo or watching the ticker at the bottom of the screen, many times they'll show like stock prices. Well, that's not there so you can get your stock price. That's there so that you will get eye fatigue and then be in a trance loop. It's like watching a flickering candle or a fire in a fireplace. How many times have you sat in front of a fireplace and you're watching the fire and you just trance out? And it's very relaxing. What's happened is you're in a trance loop by watching the fire. You are in a hypnotic state. Very calming, relaxing. Now, the thing with the fire in the fireplace that you're not getting is you're not getting the suggestions and you're not getting the loops, the imagery, but you're very relaxed. It's the same thing. And the other thing that's very important, just to take us a little further, because I think this will drive the point home as far as how programmed and how elaborate this system is, that nothing is by accident. Nothing. When you watch television, everything you see on television is there for a reason. It's there to condition you. It's to condition the kids to be disrespectful to parents. It's to condition kids to believe that there is really no right and wrong, that right is whatever you believe right to be. Truth is whatever you decide truth is. That, and truth is truth. Truth is binary. It's either on or it's off. If it's not on or off and you say, well, this is my truth, that's not a truth. That's your perspective. A perspective is not a truth. Now, when you watch television, and again, we're going to pick on the media, the news, take a look at the sets. Blues and reds. Those are the colors that you're going to predominantly see. Blue colors and red colors. Why is that? It's all intentional because they know how the human mind works. When you see red, red is associated with power, aggression, winning, warnings, alerts, fight or flight. It's there to get your attention. Stop. And it's also, especially for men, sexual arousal. That's why many times when you'll watch these ladies on these news programs and other programs, they'll be dressed in red. What that does for the male audience is, from a subconscious perspective, has them focus on the woman in the red, and it becomes a connection from a sexual perspective. And the person watching it doesn't even really know that. And then you'll see blues. And blues are associated with cool, calm, safety, open spaces. As an example, you feel very good when you look at the blue sky, when it's not being chemtrailed. It's an open space. It's very relaxing. The same thing with the ocean. When you look at the ocean, it's blue. People love to go to the beach and watch the blue ocean. It's very relaxing. Blue is associated with waking up. It's also associated with generosity and giving. This is why you will see stores like Walmart. It's blue. The buildings are blue. There's a lot of blue in the buildings. That's why when you see fast food restaurants, they'll use a lot of red because they want you in and out. They don't want you hanging around. Get in, get out. Right? That's why you have red. So, but if they want you to spend a lot of money, then you will see a set or you'll see a building with a lot of blue associated with the scene. If you watch, as an example, two pundits, talking heads on the news, you'll see that one typically is wearing a blue tie and one is wearing a red tie, or the set behind one person is more blue and the set behind the other person is more red. Well, the person with the red tie or the red set, that's a person that is giving you a line of discussion and dialogue. It's supposed to make you concerned, afraid, alert. The person in the blue is the calming factor. This is the person, the voice of reason. So many times when we see things on television, they start talking about wars and why we're supposed to be in all these wars out in the Middle East, why we're in all these places we shouldn't be. This person will come on, they will have a blue suit, a blue tie, and a blue set behind them. So that when you're watching this and he's telling you it's okay to kill people in the Middle East, you're sitting there going, well, he must know what he's talking about. He has a blue tie and a blue set behind him. That's what your mind is thinking. You don't realize that. But so that's how they get you to accept the message. So everything is about conditioning. It's conditioning you. It's the news, it's advertising, it's the reality TV shows, it's the how many TV shows do we see today? It's all about police. It's all about FEMA and the FBI and the DHS and the Department of Homeland Security, the CIA. All these shows are out there for one reason. It's to acclimate you and condition you to the police state, to the surveillance, that there's bad people out there and we are here to protect you. So you need to accept the fact that we are going to be a very large, looming presence in your life in the years to come if they get their way. So anyway, I know that was a long-winded explanation, so I hope I answered some of your questions.
I completely appreciate it. Thank you for even breaking down that concept, because again, this is one reason why I wanted to have you on, because you are able to articulate so much information and so succinctly, and where it was wordy for you, for me, I'm appreciating it. And I noticed where you were mentioning about like the tickers, and
Yep.
I was recently watching like MTV, and I noticed one year, I think it was last year, the MTV Awards, every single time they would present to you who was going to win or what the award was or when they were going to commercial or going from one scene to the next scene, they were using these mnemonic circles, which are kind of like a way
Yes.
to put somebody in a trance. And it's like, it looks trendy and it looks, digital, and it looks so just advanced and technological. So it's like, okay, cool, it's right on, it's MTV, it's edgy. So you're not paying attention that they can put it right in your face. They're like, you know what, you're so asleep, we can show you we're putting you to sleep. That's how gangster we are.
It's to keep you there. It's to keep you focused on what's going on, because on those shows, Shakira, those MTV awards, those music awards, there's a lot of ritual that's going on. And the way black magic works is that they need as many people focused and concentrating on what it is that they're doing, because they believe, and this is not something I'm making up, this is how black magicians, this is how they practice. That focus, that intention of having as many people as they possibly can watching, it gives their magic power. This is why they do these same rituals during the halftime shows at the Super Bowl. It's all ritual, and it's all dark ritual, all of it. It's like the Olympics. I think it was the Olympics out in London. That was about as black and dark and ritualistic as you could possibly get. And so it's these people that are controlling the world, or they're doing their best to keep control of the world. They are into the dark stuff, very, very dark stuff. This is why you see, we're reading today, and you see it's just exploding out in the UK, all of the pedophilia rings, which are just bursting out with British politicians and VIP people going up through the Queen involved in this type of behavior. Jimmy Savile, as an example, is a perfect example. He's dead now, but he was a serial pedophile. And things like pedophilia play a very important role in black magic and the dark rituals.
Yes, and they are definitely, I see how you were mentioning the rituals in the Olympics and in TV and the different award ceremonies, how they play out rituals like kind of right before your eyes because they have to have an audience. It's part of the power of the ritual. And
exactly.
For me, it makes the scriptures that much more validated when you realize that Christ, when he had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and he got tempted of the devil, and the devil took him up onto the highest pinnacle and showed him all that his eye could see. And he was like, just bow down to me just once, and I will give you anything that you see from just once.
Right.
And he was just like, it's written. And man shall not live by bread alone,
right,
but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And if he turned it down, he turned down what he saw. He turned down what he was being fed to sink into. But there are some people who don't turn Satan down. There's some people, and when they don't turn Satan down, they get the opportunity to sit in pinnacles of power because they don't realize the power that is also given unto this earth because they don't read the scriptures, so they don't really understand. They just hold the book. They pray over the book. They might read a couple of scriptures here or there when they go to church, and the pastor will bring out a scripture. And I got fed the Holy Spirit going through various different experiences, including going to the church. I have nothing but respect and appreciation and gratitude for every source that is a funnel to me. And I've gotten information from various funnels on various entities beyond just religion, so to speak. But in being exposed to all that, you come to the realization of what is right in front of your face because you realize what you read in the scriptures, that there are people who took Satan up on his offer.
Right. Well, and the thing is, right, when we talk about Satan, we talk about the dark side, Shakira. The whole premise is that you have to buy into the materialism, the consumerism, the power, and so many people have gotten sucked down that hole, into that dark, dark hole. And so when you go down that route, what happens is you get disconnected, again, from your divine realms, from your spirituality, from who you really are, who you truly are. You are not here to be materialistic. You're not here to be a consumer. You're not here to be a robot. You are a sovereign, divine soul. And so what happens is when we talk about Satan or we talk about Lucifer, or we talk about the dark side, however anybody wants to categorize that, or that entity, they do everything they can to strip the spirituality and the divine aspects out of the human being. And they lure you in with all of the deception and the lies and the deceit. And this is why today, what do we have? Our system today consists of consumerism. You're a consumer. People value and gauge success based upon how much they consume. My TV's bigger than yours. I'm a better person than you. I'm more important than you are. I drive a better car. I belong to a golf club. I belong to a wine drinking club. I can take better vacations than you. That therefore makes me a more important person and more of a human being. Now, how much more upside down could we possibly get than that? And we have laws going in place today where you can't feed homeless people, right? We have people starving all around the world, living in abject poverty, war-torn. What goes to these people? What aid goes to these people? What help goes to these people? Zero. So we have a big disconnect. We have a gigantic disconnect, and humanity, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, is in a crisis. Unless people start to wake up, and it has to start with the young folks. It really does. The young folks have got to get a grip on, a handle on what's really going on and how the world really operates, because it does not operate the way you've been told. It does not. And you have got to do your inner work. You have to look inside, and you have to understand, who are you? Who are you? You know, I was talking to Max Egan going back about a year ago, and we had this discussion, and one of his shows had this great analogy. He said, you ask somebody, who are you? And they'll say, well, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a doctor. And, you know, you take a step back, and then you say to the person, no, that's what you do. I ask the question, who are you as a human being? And again, this is the disconnect. People are equating the system of consumerism, the system of commerce, because it's all about commerce. We do not live in a constitutional state. We are not governed by the Constitution. All of our laws are governed by admiralty law, maritime law, the law of the sea. And I would highly recommend listening to a multitude of lectures that Jordan Maxwell has done on that topic.
I think I actually have, I feel like that name sounds very familiar, but I can't be certain. But the whole aspect of having to look at all these things that you're bringing out now as like a whole, with, you know, the rituals and the news. Yeah. And speaking of the current day news, like with all of this preempting, where do you feel the hypnosis, what do you think is set in place that their agenda is? Because if our systems like the current daily news segment, and that's what we think is what's going on in the world, then how do we reconcile what has happened that they expose to us? Like, how do you break from that? Because a lot of people who are indoctrinated, how do they stop and say, you know what, I'm not being conditioned by these blues. I'm fine. Like blues, I like blue. Blue's my favorite color.
There's nothing wrong with blue, Shakira. It's the way they use the color blue. It's like with a lot of their rituals, there's a lot of symbols that they use. Those symbols, many of those symbols that they use, there's nothing wrong with those symbols. They could be used for good purposes and they could be used for bad purposes. What they do is they take their knowledge and they use it for evil reasons. That's what they do. So there's nothing wrong with the color blue. There's nothing wrong with the color red. But it's like, you know, one time I was asked a question about, is there good energy? Is it good or bad energy? You know, energetically, we're talking about. And the answer was, well, it's the same as electricity. Is electricity bad by itself? No, it's not. Electricity is electricity. But it depends upon how you use the electricity. You can use electricity for good things, and you can use electricity for very evil things. And this is what they do. They take good things and they just turn it around, and they use it for evil, and they use it against humanity. There is an anti-humanity agenda that is in full swing. Full swing.
What do you think that you would say to the children who are like, I mean, I don't even want to focus on stuff like that. Like I want to focus on happy things and good things and things that, you know, are positive, and that's just negative, and that is not where I want to. I don't even believe that there's these autonomous powers, or that there is even a devil. Like, really, like, that doesn't even make any sense. God's supposed to be all, so how could there even be a devil that exists? Devil just exists in the mind of a man. But those people who have that defense, where you can break down, even for sake of reasoning, people who have the luxury of traveling will go to China, and red is considered love and beautiful. And I'm sure it has sexual all wrapped up in it too, so it still has that connection of similar programming. But I'm wondering, is there different programming you think going on in different sectors, like how you have totalitarianism, and you have what are all these things that they're learning in school, like the democracy, and you have people who are under what was Cuba? They
have communist states, fascism, socialism, right?
That stuff. So, like, do you think all the conditioning is kind of like linked in some kind of way and it's this global epidemic? Or do you just think, oh, it's Hollywood or just America because, we're just in our own little bubble state dream?
No, it's global. It is a global coordinated effort. You have to understand that. And I know sometimes people don't want to talk about negative things and they don't want to, oh, that's just too disturbing and I don't want to go there type of thing. But you have to understand something. You have to understand that these people, these controllers, these puppet masters, they don't mind going there at all. They do it every single day. And so when we talk about shadow government, there's a shadow government. There's a global, worldwide shadow government that's in play. And it's not just the United States. So as an example, if you listen to, I mentioned Max Egan earlier. Max is out of Australia. And if you listen to Max's show, he'll talk about the very same problems that we have here, more so, probably worse in Australia. I have friends out in New Zealand. They will tell me the same things going on in New Zealand. I have friends in the UK and the same thing there. I have friends in Germany. I have friends in Ireland. All of this is worldwide. Now, different rates and paces depending upon where you're at, okay? But clearly the direction is to lock the world down into a global government. And it's a global government where what they're looking for is humans to be resources within a corporate commercial structure. Or, if you're not going to be a corporate employee and stuff like that, then okay, then you're going to be an obedient worker. If you listen, there's a show that George Carlin did, is a bit that he did, and he said, they're not looking for critical thinkers and free thinkers. I'm paraphrasing here. They're looking for obedient workers. They want you just smart enough to operate the machines. So your question to me about what the young people need to do is to listen to shows like this. What's going to break this open, and the way we're going to be able to break free from this, is for the young folks to turn off the television set. Turn it off. Turn it off.
No, I still have to watch my reality shows.
Oh, it's the worst. So, and if you listen to alternative media, and read books, alternative research. There's a lot of very, very good researchers out there. I have a lady on my show, Deanna Spingola. She's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And if you want to learn about alternative history, then you would read books by Deanna Spingola as an example. That's the way you're going to break the code on this.
But what if they're reading Harry Potter?
Well, Harry Potter, it's fine. I guess I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy
Harry Potter. I don't know about him being fine. Like, he is definitely showing you breaking that veil.
Yeah. My point being is, look, there are things out there. You're not going to be able to avoid all this stuff. But what I'm talking about is their bread and butter. When I talk about them, I'm talking about the controllers, the elites. Their bread and butter mechanisms in which to condition and to mind control. And that is the media. It's the media. Like, as an example, if people love ball games and going to ball games and everything else, and people go to ball games and they paint their face the color of their team and they go get drunk and all that stuff. But, that goes back to the days of Rome. Bread and circuses. It's a distraction. All of this stuff is out there to distract you. It's to keep you from paying attention to what's really going on in the world. I mean, the young folks really have to break the programming. They have to get out from under it, because if they don't, then what's going to happen is what we're seeing today, it's going to be more of it. And the more of it that we have, the more control the puppet masters are going to impose. That's just a simple fact. And it's undeniable because we've seen it take place over the last 60 to 70 years. We've seen where it's gone. As people become apathetic, as they become unengaged, then what happens is the people in power take full control of that and full advantage of that. Oh, you're not paying attention? You don't care? Fine. Then we're going to pass this law and do this and do that. And, and don't you be complaining because you didn't speak up when you had a chance to speak up. Not like you really had a chance to speak up, but you know what I'm saying. People are not making any noise. People are not getting up on their feet. They're not talking about making change. Many people are just very happy doing what they do, looking at their phones, I mean, take a look at the whole chemtrail thing. Do you get into chemtrails at all?
Oh, yes, I sit on my balcony and I can count them. And when I go hiking, I just lay on the top of the mountain when I get
Hmm.
to the top and I just look at the grid. It is so funny. And I can be able to tell where and what neighborhoods and what sides of towns they frequent the most.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're also by the ocean. So, there is that kind of ocean air. But the reason why Los Angeles has so much smog to begin with is because they like to start here because we're filtering it out to the world. So,
Well, the young people need to understand chemtrails, the aerosol spraying, Shakira. See, they don't worry about people like myself and probably even folks that are your age. The reason for that is because, first of all, I know what the sky used to look like. And I know that, what we're seeing today is not the way the sky is supposed to look. I know it's not contrails. I know they're spraying. But what they're doing is we talk about the media. They are conditioning the young folks to accept the fact that that's the way the sky is supposed to look. That is the natural state of the sky. And they are putting chemtrails in commercials. They're putting chemtrails in magazine ads, newspaper ads. When you watch your local weather channel station, you watch your local news and the weather guy comes on, many times what they'll do is, as they're showing you the weather behind the screen with the days of the week and whether it's going to rain or not, you see chemtrails. It's all conditioning. So when you're watching that, you're subconsciously watching it, thinking to yourself, okay, that's what the sky looks like. So when you go outside and you see that, you're thinking, oh, there's nothing wrong. That's the sky. See, this is how they're working on the young people. They're working on the young folks so that the next generations don't know any better.
yeah, I mean, they haven't even seen a normal sky. They just got here. So,
Exactly.
how are they supposed to know? But yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, even when I remember growing up and them teaching us about clouds, I was actually having the same conversation with my family over the holidays this year. And the chemtrails, for me, I have my own personal theory, and I know probably people will be like, really? What you talking about, Willis? Like, it sounds so ridiculous and so insane, but to me it is so possible and so probable and so likely that we don't even notice it happening before us.
What do you think
And
it is?
I think that movie, what's it called? Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I haven't really, I kind of fell asleep on it, but I remember there was one portion where the entire sky kind of becomes like a screen.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're spraying all these different, like how you were talking about metallics, like they probably have, the aluminum and it blocks the pineal or whatever kind of gland that you were talking about and all that stuff. It has different, like, metallic things that you're putting into the air and you're creating like a screen to the point where it can be, there can be some kind of broader dispensation of like technology, so to speak.
Like Project Bluebeam. In other words, you're saying that they could possibly project holographic types of images? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I would, in some regards, I think they'd sell it to the population of, yeah, well, you can have airspace now. You can put your logo here and you can have your business consume there because every single time we drive by, we see your logo in the air. And then we'll be like, yeah, okay, we're going to accept it. We'll, fund this because technology, as wonderful as it is, I mean, I appreciate technology. I am a little untechnologically savvy and advanced,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, I like things simple and I like things old school, and that's just me. But I have family and I have friends and I know a lot of people who technology is like, that's not just the holy grail to them. I mean, it's the evolution of consciousness of just the direction of man's going anyway, and you need to keep up because that is what would make any sense to stay in some antiquated state. How is that benefiting you? And how do you even turn around and say, okay, well, you know what, I'm turning off my reality shows and I'm not watching my sports. Like, to actually choose to do that seems so extreme that it makes people feel like, well, I don't need to seek into knowing that if it's going to happen anyway. If it's that big, if it's that global, if it's that dark, if it's that all kind of psychoness that they're spending all this money and putting it into every sector of industry to fund that very mission that all boils down to some like spiritual principle, then like at the end of the day, it's going to happen. So I'm just going to live my life and, do what, my heart tells me to do or whatever, because this is what I believe, this is my truth. How do you talk and try to at least encourage them to seek? Because it's hard enough to break that barrier to convince them, because they shouldn't believe anything that anybody says, let alone you or me. Like, they have to have that desire to want to seek that information for themselves. Like, seek and you shall find, but if you're not going to seek, you're not going to find anything. It's
Right.
kind of like if you lose your keys. I feel like everybody from the age of like 13 on, you have a pair of keys. And if you lose your keys, like at the end, that's the only thing that matters at that point. You're actively searching. You're focused on searching. Even if you get diverted from searching, you're going to go back to searching. You have to find your keys. Your keys open up everything to your home, to things you need. They keep things protected. They're your keys. It's kind of like it's the truth. It's the key. And if you can't seem to find it, it's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that you haven't gone out to seek for it. Some people can, it exists and they can stumble upon it. And some people, they can go out and they can actively hunt and probably still not find, because you can look for your keys and not find them. But if you look behind like the pillow, or if you look under the bed, or if you look on the nightstand, definitively nobody can come along and tell you, oh, well, it's on your nightstand. It's like, no, I know it's not on my nightstand because I checked. I was seeking for it. I'm looking. I want to find my keys. Now, I'm grateful that somebody's coming along to try to help me, but I already know where I'm not going to be skewed because I know the truth of something. So it's like, in order to find the truth of something, you have to be in experiential mode of having sought it to know if it's the truth or not. And then eventually, if you keep seeking, you might find your keys. You might find the truth, and it might not be as ominous as it may seem.
Well, what I tell young folks is, and I know it sounds ominous, so if everybody's, if I sound like Dr. Doom and Gloom here, I don't mean to be, but the thing is, I've been at this for a long time, so I see a lot of things, and that maybe a lot of other people are just simply not seeing. In fact, I know that. I have the same problem within my own family. So, but what I tell the young folks, Shakira, is use your creativity, use your imagination. Don't let anybody ever suppress that. Because once they suppress your creativity and your imagination, you become a robot. And that's not what you're here to do. So if you like to paint, if you like to draw, if you like to write poetry, if you like to make music, I mean, whatever it is, if you like to knit, sew, if you like to do landscaping, do those things. Don't let anybody ever take your creativity and your imagination from you. Because we see this taking place in the schools, Shakira. I mean, one of the first things that they do whenever they cut a budget is they take the music programs out. They take the theater programs out. Why do they do that? Why do they do that? There's a reason why they do that. It's taking away the creativity and the imagination of the young folks, of the youth. So that's what I tell the young folks to do. And what I do is I do sit down with, I know my girlfriend has two boys. One is 19 and one is 17. And I do the best I can when conversations come up to talk to them about, maybe you should think of it this way, or would you consider this particular alternative or this particular explanation? Why don't you just think about it a little bit? Just think about it. Think about it. The biggest thing is, how do you know what you know? Do you know it because you've experienced it, or do you know it because somebody told you it? And the answer is they were told, and they believed, and they took it on faith. And so,
Predictive programming.
Yeah, it's programming. And so that's the thing. So the creativity and the imagination aspect of a young people, that's the most important piece. Because if you lose that, you lose a big piece of what it is to be a human being. I mean, if you go, and I don't know how much time we have here, but In the corporate world, I'll say this real quick. People in the corporate world, they're referred to as human resources. You're a resource. You're not a human being. You're a human resource. Well, what's a resource? My stapler is a resource. My copier is a resource. My phone is a resource. My desk is a resource. My chair's a resource. So they categorize people in the corporate world. They put them into the same category as inanimate objects. And so even people who are in the corporate world, they have to understand, if they could just break through and understand how they're being categorized, and words have meaning, that's the thing, then they could take a step back and say, well, wait a minute. I'm a human being. I'm not a resource. I'm not a wrench. I'm not a hammer. So people have to start thinking that way. They really do. The other thing is people have to get back to a family nucleus. That's the other thing that has been ripped out. And getting back to a more community-oriented mindset. That's been taken out. You mentioned video games before. The big thing with video games was to keep kids from playing with each other. It's to keep them isolated and separated, and they did that with the family in general. They took the mother out of the family nucleus. There was many years ago when I was growing up, my mother didn't work. She raised the family. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she took care of the home. They vilify any mom that believes that she should be home and she should be caring for the house and caring for the children. Now, if you opt not to do that, that's fine. But if you opt to do that, you should not be vilified for it. So when they did that, fathers are working 50, 60 hours a week. Then the mothers hit the workplace. Originally, mothers were working part-time. Now they've got them. Moms are working full-time jobs. They've increased the cost of living through inflation to the point where both parents have to work in order to afford a home and to pay for school and food and everything else. And so what happens is the children, there's very little time for the kids. So the kids wind up going to daycare and preschool types of places. And then they go to school, and they're at school for 8 hours. And then they're in aftercare or after-school types of programs. So essentially what happens is the parental guidance, the parental direction, the parental love has been extracted from the equation. On any given day, let's say you're awake 16 hours. For most families, the children are away from one of their parents for, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. And they're with somebody else, somebody who's a caretaker, not a parent, a caretaker. So what this leads to is that the child essentially becomes a ward of the state. And this is what goes on. And of course, I know you know this, the schools are not teaching, they're not educating people, the kids. They're not teaching the kids life skills. They're teaching them how to be good little obedient robots and workers. Because if they were really teaching and educating, filling the kids' heads with knowledge and wisdom, they would talk about how to grow your own food. They would talk about alternative medicine and nutrition. They would teach you how to build a home, how to fix a car. They would teach you about electricity, carpentry, plumbing. They would teach you about expanded consciousness and spirituality. They would teach you all this stuff. None of that stuff is taught. None of it. Because those are life skills. Those are skills that you can take into your life and you could be successful. You could build a home. You can grow your food. You can do all these things. You can fix your car. But none of those things are taught. None of those things. So the system is a system that's in place to keep the children away from their creativity and their imagination. It's to keep them thinking that they have authority figures over them constantly, 24/7, telling them what to do, what to wear, what to eat, where to be, what job you should take. And the kids have got to understand that this is what's going on. But I think the first step, again, is to understand your creativity and your imagination are key. Don't lose that.
Yeah,
is there any other happy things you'd like me to talk about?
No, honestly, I mean, if anybody's going to stick around and listen to me, you're going to have to talk about this kind of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's only dark when you realize that it exists.
Right.
But when you come to that next level of searching, you understand the power
Yep.
that exists within you.
Right.
And if you don't truly trust it and you can't like truly download into that, then there's no way that you can have a faith, belief, or even freedom of fear.
Right.
There's nothing to fear, but there's everything to gain from gaining knowledge, because you will suffer in your ignorance.
Right.
It's just inevitable.
You're taught to be fearful. And you're right. Once you break through and you press through and walk through that fear, there's nothing to be afraid of.
There's nothing. It's almost, the whole thing is like, to me, it's this huge broken down, like you mentioned, the Leave It to Beavers, and they kind of teach you this Pollyanna lifestyle, and then as time goes on, you see it getting more dark with them doing rituals at the Super Bowl halftime and stuff.
Right.
But when you look at the grand scheme of everything, you can truly start to realize that, wait a second, okay, I was told that this was like a beautiful, wonderful love story with life. If you just kind of believe, anything can happen, and everything's wonderful, and people are good, and everything's okay, and nothing to worry about. This is a romance movie that I'm in love with, the American dream. And then you kind of morph and you start to see, okay, this is more like a drama, because things start happening in your life. Like you start realizing, okay, I have bills and I have this, or okay, maybe bills is not the right topic to bring up, but maybe I'm getting bullied, or whatever it is that you deal with, especially as kids or whatever. You start to kind of misappropriate your focus and not really realize that, since how you said that everything is getting set up, you can look at it as it kind of trails all the spans of genres that you get in movies, from the romance to the the drama, to it being a little bit of a throwback kind of how would you say, like a documentary, because you're living your life and you don't walk it with like a soundtrack. I mean, you might have iPods in your ears everywhere you go, but for the most part, you only kind of live life according to your daily experiences. And when you don't see outside of your bubble, you don't realize that what's actually happening is that it's a horror movie. And you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, no, this isn't happening, and it will freak you out. But then when you come to realize that it all turns its head, when you find that power and you find that understanding, you find that resolve, like it's impenetrable. It's you're on that rock. You are solidified, and you can definitely know that it's a comedy. And then it becomes the greatest story that was ever told, and it's all in the Bible that nobody will read. Because nothing hasn't happened that hasn't already existed in the book, where people are like, oh, that was in the Bible, girl, that was in the Bible. And it's like, of course this is in the Bible. Everything's in the Bible. It's all cyclical. It keeps happening until we learn from how we went through the process of demise. We're not going to understand how to get out of Alice's rabbit hole. Like, right. That is the key. And that's another thing that, oh my goodness, like every child of every generation is programmed with that specific movie. And that goes into so many different directions that I probably don't necessarily have time to go into. But I did, before you go, I wanted to kind of just touch on a little bit, just because how I mentioned to you before, I wanted to talk in historical terms first and then move to media, but you were kind of, Well, I know, like I mentioned before, kids, they're probably taking a lot of different classes. Like, I remember my American history class with Mr. Lewinsky. I loved him so dearly, and nobody liked him. He was this big, really overweight, unkept, like, just, he was a very sad soul of a person, but he was very smart. And nobody cared about him because he kind of smelled, and he was just that history teacher. And I just remember some of the things that I'm learning in school. And then, of course, you have your other experiences where you get exposed to things, and you are a child. And, of course, back when I was a kid, we still talked to each other. We still went outside and played. So, you have those kind of conversations where you're like, some things that I'm not sure and I don't understand. And gosh, it's like you have to remember all these dates and all these people and all these players, and it's not really making sense. And you have this, textbook, and you got to take it home, and you have to carry it everywhere. And in some urban neighborhoods, they don't even have enough books to being able to share, so they don't even have this information, but they're being told this is what it is, this is what it is. You don't even get a chance to read it for yourself. Don't even get used to that, because that's not something you should focus on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they have all these different, like, tools of bringing out things that I don't know how much you even know, like a Common Core. Like, I don't have any children, but you were speaking of, like, homeschooling.
Right.
And I have a cousin that homeschooled her 3 boys, and when I tell you, they are just such brilliant souls, and
Right.
they are so well fed. And I take nothing away from myself and my mom. My mom did an excellent job, and I went to public school, and I see the difference even with, like, the concept of that unit that they're trying to break down with correlating with Common Core, where they don't want to be able to have the children be able to come home and even do homework anymore with their parents, because they don't want to be able to dialogue and come to critical thinking, understanding together. It's kind of like, no, Mom, this is not how we do it in school anymore. It's different now. That was that way in your day, and it kind of breaks down that whole dynamic. Like, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? Because I have, not to keep asking the longest question in the world, but
what's my take on things like Common Core? Are you asking?
Yeah, because I have a niece and a nephew who equally, I don't think I could even possibly birth better children than my brother and sister-in-law have. Like, they are just the brightest, smartest, most talented, most perfect things ever. And they go to public school, and then I look at my cousins who homeschooled her children, and they both are very well astute.
Right.
But they're getting a different kind of education that the family doesn't allot for, because people have to work. Like, at the end of the day, there's sometimes not even people in the household to be able to say, like, I need to be able to put my child in daycare, and I need my child to be able to understand that they have to go into the after-school program. I'm trying to do all these things for you because I'm trying to make a better situation for you, and I need you to go grow up and get an education so that you can handle this better than it's being handled now. Like, it becomes this situation where, they're instituting this thing about Common Core. And I, again, don't have a child, but I just see how that's starting to be a seed, and I just wanted to know if you have any information in regards to that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Common Core. In fact, I've put many articles up on the blog about Common Core. And let me just say this. I'm going to be doing a show probably next month with 2 folks who are homeschoolers, parents that teach their kids. And I'll talk about Common Core. And Common Core, at its core, is Soviet-style education program where, and that's really where it has its roots. And it comes down to a curriculum which really dumbs down the students and, like you mentioned, doesn't want them to critically think and free think. I don't know if anybody's, if you're listening, you can basically Google this or take a look on YouTube, but take a look at some of the videos they have on Common Core math, how to solve a very basic, fundamental math problem. And it's this long, drawn-out process. You go through 92 steps to be able to prove that 2 plus 3 equals 5. And the reason why that's like that it's intentionally convoluted, intentionally done that way in order to confuse the child, to make it difficult, unnecessarily difficult for the child to think through because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. The human mind wants to do things logically. It wants to do things efficiently and effectively. So it takes a look at a math problem and says, oh, okay, so 2 plus 3 is 5. This is how I do it. Boom. That's it. But then you have Common Core introducing a curriculum and a process that says, no, you can't do it that way. The new way of doing it is this way. And this has caused a lot of frustration, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiousness amongst elementary school children. And I know this because I have friends of mine that their kids are in school, and one of the people that's going to be on my show, Jen, she's a mom that homeschools, and she told me that her children were struggling big time in the schools with this Common Core curriculum. But Common Core is there. It's part of the school system's indoctrination and propaganda program. And the thing is, I'm going to qualify that. The teachers are good people. The principals, the assistant principals, they're good people. The thing is, they are stuck in this matrix also. And they are indoctrinated and propagandized into this process. So to them, this is the way it works. Oh, I guess we're going to use Common Core because this is the new way of doing things. This is improved, new and improved. So this is what we're going to teach, type of thing. So what's happening is, they're not taking a step back and saying, well, wait a minute. This is ridiculous. This is not helping the kids. This is frustrating the kids. We got kids that are all stressed out. We got them on Ritalin and everything else, So, but now I will say that there are schools and there are locations that are pushing back and have told Common Core to take a walk, to go away, because they're realizing that this is nothing more than an agenda to, and I hate to say this, but it's there to keep the kids dumbed down. That's what it's there for. At the end of the day, that's what Common Core is about. That's why they have standardized testing, Shakira, as you probably know. I mean, think about that. A standardized test.
I thought about that when you said, when you were talking about polls. And I was like, when we go and we vote, we go to a poll. Like, it's
Right.
really just to gauge, where are you, so we know how much more we can condition you. Okay, thank you.
Exactly.
We're under this other, I know I'm getting polled for my vote, but for some reason I never quite understood why, if we can all just agree to have a vote because we're voting,
Right.
why we need an electoral college to be able to say, well, you know what? We're going to vote this way because over here we get 3 extra votes and you only get 1. So
Right.
be like, oh, it's so confusing. You understand it, but you don't.
It's set up so it could be manipulated.
Yeah.
That's why it's set up that way. In a standardized test, like you're right, it's like a poll, right? So if you take a standardized test as a kid and you don't do well on the standardized test, you had the wrong
Were too smart.
wrong answer, Billy. So what happens is a lot of kids struggle with the standardized test because they're not robots. So they're creative, imaginative little kids. And so what happens is, if they don't do well on these tests, then they say, well, you know what? He's got to take some remedial classes. There's something wrong with Billy. There's nothing wrong with Billy. He's a kid. And the reason why homeschooling excels is because homeschooling takes the teaching at an individual level. You are an individual. You're a human being. What makes your clock tick, Billy? What is the best way for you to learn? What's the best way? And so from a homeschooling perspective, you can really tailor and cater the education to how to optimize Billy's ability to learn versus ramming through one size fits all for all kids. And when you do that, you're going to get the core group of kids that are going to fall in line and they're going to be, just do whatever it is they need to do. But then you're going to have those that are going to be considered to be the outcasts, and they're not outcasts. They're beautiful human beings. They just didn't take well to the indoctrination.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to have enough comfort to step outside of the status quo and everybody else around you. It's doing that. And it seemed, just very strange in so many regards, where you can see any military of any country, and demographic or background, to have that kind of left-right principle. It's like, okay, I get it, because there's always going to be the mirror image that, in my belief, let me just make that disclosure, there's going to be the mirror image of that reflection that Satan has to represent everything that God does, because he is the mirror image. He is the false light. So he's going to look like, he's going to walk like, he's going to talk like, everything that's going to come towards you is going to be desirous of receiving. It's not, he doesn't always come like the horror movie. He's going to come like the wolf in sheep's clothing. He comes as, beautiful and engaging and alluring and attractive. Oh my
Right.
gosh. So attractive that you have to know who you're serving at all times, because there are options out there by which aren't the actual image. It's just a mirror that looks like it. And you can tumble down. That's the Alice in Wonderland hole that you fall into when you're falling into a mirror that's endless over there. You have to kind of turn around and back up and walk out the backside and really kind of come to a more aerial view of understanding there is a dichotomy of good and evil. There is the light and the dark. There is that dual principle. But that dual principle can be manipulated and played upon, like the energy you made reference to.
Yes,
like
that's right.
electricity, and all those things kind of culminate to how you were saying it's all about trying to dumb down the children. This is all against the children. The adults, we've been under control for so long. They're like, that's fine. We got that on the shelf. That's finished. That's done. But children are the reason why the advertising and everything is just geared towards them, and they're always slowly pushing the veil of what is okay for a children to be associated with or see or participate in. Like, there will be all kind of sexual jokes in any type of like comedy sketch that's on TV or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like there's all kind of different barometers that get pushed from the Leave It to Beaver to the current day. And I can't say that I don't have my shows and I don't love them, but I definitely watch them to analyze them to see what is being conditioned, because I assume, like you, I don't know for say, but I'm only assuming that you got into hypnotherapy because you were trying to understand, how am I hypnotized? Like, how is this that they have done this to me? And in order to understand it, you have to comb backwards. And that's kind of how I had to do, like, the scriptures, or, to comb backwards through understanding and then realizing all this different mind control, and then realizing, okay, how do they institute it? It has to be it's not just magic. Some of it is.
Well,
that's the crazier part about it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and going to the hypnosis thing, actually, I got into hypnosis because I realized the power of the mind. I realized how powerful the mind is. Now, here's the thing, Shakira, right? And this is what I tell people. Somebody can come to me who has smoked for 30 or 40 years, and they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, Mike, I've tried everything. I can't quit. I'm here, and you think you can help me? And I'm like, yeah, I can help you. So with my program, somebody will quit smoking after 2 sessions. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back. There's a reason why I'm saying this. If I can turn your behavior around in 2 sessions after you were in a habituated pattern of behavior for 30 or 40 years, and if I can turn that around in 2 sessions, what does that say about how powerful the mind is, right? It says that the mind is very powerful. And this is why they do what they do. This is why there's a perpetual motion machine of hypnosis and trance and suggestions and imagery out there. Because they know if they can just continue to pummel you with that stuff, that they can steer you. They can steer your behavior. They can make you think what they want you to think. But as I said before, people can break the trance. You just need to step away from a lot of the catalyst and the stuff they have out there to essentially try to mold your mind.
Well, I have a question. I mean, I'm curious to understand and know, like, if you are aware of this mass epidemic of hypnotizing and how the mind has the ability to just be easily suggested upon, how do you get somebody to want to go under hypnosis, to be under the suggestion and power of somebody else? When you're under hypnosis, you don't know what they could download into you. That's kind of like, that's like power.
Okay,
that's
yeah, but that's a different, Shakira. That's a very good point you're on. But let me just explain this. I didn't mean to cut you off, because I get that question asked a lot. There's a difference between mind control and hypnosis. You're talking about mind control. Now, when you're in hypnosis, I don't have control over anybody when they're in hypnosis. They come in under their own volition. They want to go into trance. They want to relax. They want to do this work. They want to make change and shifts in their life. Positive change, positive shifts. But when we talk about mind control is brainwashing. And when we talk about mind control programs that the government was involved in, like MK Ultra, we're talking about the formulation of amnesia and new identities, right? So when we talk about mind control, we're talking about reprogramming or a repattern of the mind. And the way they go about doing that is not just with hypnosis. Hypnosis is one tool in their toolbox when we talk about mind control. To repattern the mind and to invoke mind control, you have pain, electric shock, sensory deprivation, isolation, direct verbal brainwashing, there's physical and emotional trauma, there's threats, there's many times there's drugs that are used in mind control programs like LSD, scopolamine, mescaline. So that's the difference. We have to delineate between mind control, a mind control program, and hypnosis. They are not the same thing. Although in the media they will try to tell you hypnosis is mind control is hypnosis. Nothing can be further from the truth. Hypnosis can be part and is part of a mind control program, but it's only a subset. All those other things I just mentioned are needed in order to break the mind down. You have to break the person before you can actually invoke the hypnosis part of the equation in a mind control program. Did that make sense? Or
no, it makes perfect sense. I'm glad. You've been asked the question before because as I was talking, I was kind of thinking, wait a second, I'm confused by this. But what kind of state is the mind in when they're under hypnosis? You mentioned when you watch television that you're under a beta or alpha wave, and I'm wondering what kind of mind state does the mind have to go into to have that kind of suggestion? Is it the same state, the same kind of wavelength?
When you go into hypnosis, first of all, your waking state is beta. Then you go into an alpha state. An alpha state is a light state of trance, and that's the state that you are in essentially when you are watching television, as an example, okay, or when you're reading a book, watching a movie. That's an alpha state. And the way you know that is, let's just say you're reading a book and your spouse or your partner is calling you and you don't hear them, and then they come into the room and they say, hey, I've been calling you, didn't you hear me? Oh no, I've been immersed in this book. Oh my god, this book is great. Well, the reason why you didn't hear them was because you were in a trance state. And the alpha state, from a technical perspective, is 7 to 12 hertz. That's all your relaxation, your visualization, and your creativity. So musicians, artists, poets, actors, actresses, when they're doing their thing, they're in this trance state, this alpha state, and that's where the creativity is formulated. When you do hypnosis, you can do hypnosis in an alpha state, but because it's a light trance state, you'd have to do a lot of sessions in order to get the change or the shift in behavior.
So what state is it in?
A good hypnotist should get you into a very deep alpha, and you really want your clients in the next depth level, which is theta, Theta, theta state.
Theta. Yeah.
Okay, you want to be in theta state. So if you go to a hypnotist, I should say.
But wouldn't that be like the heaviest level of the ability to tamper with the mind? If we want to be free thinkers, we want to be free thinkers? Like, do we just make the decision to have somebody else kind of direct us for our benefit? Because wouldn't we have to at some point in time say we can do it? Like we can stop smoking. Like it's part of the mind. The mind should be able to heal itself. It should be able to do what it does without other people, right?
Right.
Or am I wrong? I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just my mind goes.
That's okay. No, it's a good question, and let me just answer it this way. If you go to my website, I explain this. And let me just read this real quick, and I think this will answer your question. Hypnosis, when it's facilitated by an experienced hypnotherapist, can help you tap into the power of your unconscious mind. Unlike your conscious mind, which manages your rules and logic, your unconscious mind stores long-term memory, memories of trauma, emotional or physical, repressed memories, thought patterns, habits, desires, core beliefs, feelings, and emotions which trigger behavior or reactions at the conscious level. So unconscious patterns and programs are formed by repetition. You see? Repetition. So anything that's done or felt or imagined repeatedly begins to create what we call habituated patterns. So this is why they do what they do. This is why I mentioned before that their mind control through the media, I mentioned before, was a perpetual motion machine. It is ongoing 24/7. That is the way that they create the habituated patterns. In other words, your mind is constantly focused on this, constantly looking at it, constantly hearing it. It's like when you're growing up as a kid, if you have parents or somebody that tells you you'll never be successful, you'll never be any good, you're not smart. They keep telling you all the time what's going to happen to that kid. They're going to grow up thinking, I'm not smart and I'm never going to amount to anything. And that is what the media is doing to the population, essentially telling the population, this is about as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get any better. Don't think for yourself. We'll tell you what to think, how to think. We'll tell you how to behave, when to get up, when to go to sleep, so on and so forth. They're constantly bombarding the people, the masses, with these suggestions, which creates the patterns and programs that become habituated. Did I get too complex?
No, you didn't get complex at all. I mean, I have, like I mentioned before, some friends that are under hypnosis, and one of them went for smoking, and yeah, it worked for her, and she's really happy with it, and she definitely is one of those people who tries different options for kind of seeking out. And I think that's what's good, is that people need to start somewhere. They need to seek and go and inquire and talk and share and sharpen. I mean, for me, I wouldn't personally go under hypnotherapy, but I would go on my knees. You know, I would pray to the Father. But however anybody kind of starts their journey in order to understanding what is out there and what is technically happening right in front of our face, it's almost the most it's just such an audacity to sit back and be like, wow, like, this is a huge play. Shakespeare was not joking when he said all the world is a stage, that we are just mere players. Like, he was serious, and it's so powerful to be able to go into, which I wish that we had time to get into some history type things. And, you know, I'll have to definitely bring you back on.
Oh, you can have me come back on. I know we talked for a long time. I know you had no intentions of speaking for 2 hours.
No, I mean, I'm happy to do so. Like, I don't call people too often, and when I do, I can definitely talk their ear off, and most of my friends can attest to that. So I'm glad that we were able to get through a lot of things. Like, we talked about family unit, and we talked about chemtrails, and we talked about Common Core and the media and the news and GMO, and what else, like fluoride, mind control, ghost dreams. Like, I think we have a really good basis for coverage, and I just really wanted to thank you for coming on and being my first guinea pig.
You're very welcome, Shakira. It's been an absolute pleasure. You know, I'm going to tell you a little story real quick. I know we have to go here, but I only started my radio show, I guess, about 15 to 16 months ago, and the person that came on to help me, that got my show to get some traction, was Max Egan. And I had Max on again just recently, and it had been a little over a year since I last had him on. And I personally thanked him on air because he came on when nobody knew who I was. Who was going to listen to Mike Williams? Who is that guy, you know? And Max came on and he helped me. So I'm going to do the same thing for anybody that wants to get going and get some traction and get the truth out there and help people to go with their intuition and think with their hearts. I'm going to come on and I'm going to help them to get their shows up off the ground.
Well, I sincerely appreciate it. I had sent you an email, and as you know, I didn't get your return reply. That I was like, oh no, like, how does this work? What do I do? And then all of a sudden you sent me an email to say, you know what? I don't think my email went through. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, it was AOL.
Well, thank you so much. Again, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you taking 2 hours of your time to come and talk to, you know, the kids out there and people who are, you know, even the adults. I hope adults are listening, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to be like the children that Christ was speaking of, and we all technically are kind of like children inside. Like, I'm kind of old, at least in the standards of like this demographic that we're talking to. And I personally, just feel like there needs to be some baton that's passed down to start that dialogue, to encourage those things that may not seem, typical, or kind of get you like, oh, whatever, you're just focus on what's important. Just, go back to business as usual and put your head down and do what everybody else is doing. Like, that's too much.
Right.
And, sometimes those are those people who even get bullied. And we have these huge bully campaigns that are going on, and I feel like it's like sort of misappropriating the direction of what the American population is getting bullied. There's so much stuff that's happening. I mean, the globe's getting bullied. But they push these agendas to kind of look like these campaigns that are sort of like, what is it called when you have like different organizations that are set up to do good, like nonprofits and
like
stuff.
foundations and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like foundations, and then you give to the foundation, you're like, what's really going on with my money at the foundation? It's just it's unfortunate, but it's true, and it exists. And for those of us who are willing to, step out of our comfort zone and realize that there is a power, and like I said, you have to figure out where you seek that from. Again, I'm always going to reference and rep up the Lord Jesus, and I'm going to follow suit in regards to the King James Version Bible, not all the 50 million different Levin versions that they want to feed us. They don't even change Shakespeare's words for us to understand, but they change the Bible. Really? Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to go on that route, but...
And by the way, it's not a hard thing to read the Bible.
No. Thank you for saying that.
I know. I mean, I did, and... I studied actually Christianity for over 3 years. I really, dug in. And so, I read it, and I kept thinking to myself, well, what's the problem? Why do I need somebody, a middleman? Why do I need,
Thank you.
Why do I need, Bible classes and everything else? Just pick it up and read it, folks.
90 seconds.
Oh, we got to run.
Oh my goodness, we've got 90 seconds.
We're getting the buzzer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to you. And if you can let everybody know where to find you so that can at least be the last tag.
Yeah, just go to sageofquay.com. Sage, S-A-G-E, of Quay, Q-U-A-Y, sageofquay.com. That's my hub website. You'll find everything I put out in the media on that website.